Hi everyone, and welcome to our next session, Ending Geoblocking. This content ought to be available in your country, with Julia Reda from the European Parliament. Please give her a warm hand.
Hello, I'm talking to you today because this year in the EU we have the chance of getting rid of one of the most anachronistic, most un-European and most analog practices on the internet. You probably know what I'm talking about. It's this right here. It stops millions of Europeans from watching the videos they want to see, ordering goods online and downloading content, and even seeing things that they've paid for with their own taxes or that's funded by advertising. So everybody hates geo-blocking, right? Not everybody. There is a small town in Belgium where some people at least have a different view. This is from a debate in the European Parliament.
An end to geo-blocking would favour the bigger players. And as we know, most of these are from the other side of the Atlantic and are not so present on our continent. The idea of a pan-European license, I think, would be an impediment. We have to take account of the cultural diversity on our continent, language, culture, etc. So it means that not all works will be able to have access to the same audiences.
As an English speaker, I actually feel very strongly about this because the market is already overloaded with American products, and the last thing I want as a British person, and I'm sure all of you as from other member states want, is actually more American programs in Europe. And if we do away with geo-blocking and we actually introduce something along the lines of a single European copyright, we will find that the big American players have more access to the market and we see more of them.
We don't only want American films and concerns to be supported in Europe. We want to ensure that our creative spirits are strengthened in Europe.
So you have quite a lot of politicians from different parties who are somehow arguing geo-blocking is actually protecting European cultures. I would like to challenge that notion today and point out a lot of the problems that we have with geo-blocking. First of all, you have creators who could have a bigger audience in Europe, but actually fail to reach this audience, and people who would actually like to pay for content online, and they find out that there is no way of legally paying for the films or the music that they would like to see. Geo-blocking is particularly a huge problem for linguistic minorities. 1 in 10 Europeans speak some kind of a minority language, and these minorities and also long-term migrants quite often find themselves in the situation that they are permanently on the wrong side of the border, and they are too small of a group for the market to serve them. And that means in practice that sometimes they are geo-blocked from even watching the news coverage of elections in which they would be allowed to vote in. So they really are suffering from this practice. And when you think about it, geo-blocking is also just about the most un-European thing you can think of. Europe is conceived to be one single market where people can communicate freely. Any of you who may have grown up in Western Germany and went to school in the 80s or earlier, you probably learned French in school or had the opportunity to learn French in school. There's a reason for that. For decades, European politicians have tried to make it easier for Europeans to communicate with each other. And it would be completely unthinkable, for example, for you to go into a store in Italy during your holiday and to be denied service because you have the wrong passport. And on the internet, which is a global medium, suddenly this practice is still being used, even though even putting into place these borders actually requires an active interventions from the companies. So why are we requiring companies to keep using this practice? What we can say, and what the European Commission has actually found out in its own studies, is that geo-blocking is pretty much universally hated. From the consumers they asked about this, 80% said that they had come into contact with geo-blocking in their own lives, and even more, 90% said that geo-blocking shouldn't happen within the European Union. So why does it happen? First of all, in copyright law itself, there is nowhere where it says that companies that show something online have to geo-block it. However, if you buy a license for content, the rights holder can impose conditions on how you show them. And quite a lot of particularly larger right holders like Hollywood studios are putting something in their contract to require geo-blocking. So what you can see here is from the Sony leaks. These are internal Sony documents that were put on the internet a while ago, and it says, for example, from a contract with Amazon, that Amazon has to employ geo-blocking, and it even has to block VPNs or proxies that people use to get around geo-blocking. So this is something that quite often the company that geo-blocks actually has no control over, because it's the rights holder that's imposing the geo-blocking on them in a contract. But there can also be other reasons for geo-blocking that have nothing to do with contracts between rights holders and services, and maybe they don't even have anything to do with copyright. Quite a lot of people think that the reason why live streams are often geo-blocked in Germany somehow is a copyright problem. Actually, there's a different reason for this. In Germany, if you provide a live stream, you have to see whether you comply with the so-called Rundfunkstaatsvertrag, which is a wonderful broadcasting law that doesn't exist in exactly the same way in other countries. And the Rundfunkstaatsvertrag tests whether what you provide online is actually a web TV service. So you have to look at different criteria. First of all, is your live stream targeted at more than 500 people? Second of all, is it somehow occurring regularly at fixed intervals? And does it have some kind of journalistic or editorial content? If all of these are the case, you are actually a broadcaster and require a broadcasting license. So perhaps the live streams from Republika, since it has been taking place for 10 years, maybe the Republika is a broadcaster now. Of course, any kind of company that is offering live stream services quite often doesn't want to have to test this and doesn't want to have to deal with the national laws of German broadcasting. And so quite often they decide to simply block live streams in Germany altogether. YouTube actually did this until quite a short while ago, and the same problem also exists with other live streaming services. So there is certainly a problem that if every country in the EU kind of deals with their laws that regard the internet somehow differently, you're going to have the problem that it will be too costly for companies to comply with all of these 28 different laws, and sometimes they will decide to just block laws, to block certain countries instead. But sometimes geo-blocking is also a business decision to protect a particular outdated business model. One case of this is actually a practice by the BBC. This is Doctor Who, quite a popular BBC show that actually people could watch on Netflix quite shortly after the shows were produced. Except the last season of Doctor Who was not available for Netflix users in Great Britain, where the show was actually coming from, because the BBC had decided they wanted to protect the DVD sales that would be higher in the UK, they thought, if people have no possibility to watch the show on Netflix. So quite often it's just a question of making a little bit more profit by not showing certain things. Of course, all of these different reasons for geo-blocking can be combined with each other. Because if you have, for example, the online service of a public broadcaster, they combine a lot of different elements. They may have some films that they have produced themselves, others for which they have bought a license, and they are mixing all these different things, and some of them maybe have to be geo-blocked and others don't. But what happens quite often is that it's too difficult to make this decision based on every single piece of information that they're showing, and instead they end up, for example, blocking a news report about the Austrian elections that has absolutely no commercial value outside of Austria. But the effect of this is, of course, that people who could vote in these elections are not able to follow the news on the internet, and nobody actually has any benefit from that, because there is no way that this content could somehow be used again at a later point and still be valuable. So what should the EU be doing about this? There are some ideas that are floating around that would actually be relatively easy to achieve. First of all, what you could do is allow something that's called passive sales. This is a concept that already exists for physical products, and it means that if you are a streaming company, you have to buy or get a license for showing a film in the country in which you operate. And then if you show this on the internet, you don't have to check where your users are coming from. The only thing that you have to make sure is that you don't actively advertise your program in a different country. So for example, if I'm showing the Champions League, I've bought a license for that in Germany, I can show it, but I don't go around putting advertisement for that into Irish television or something like that. And I think this concept is pretty familiar already, that people comply with the law of the country in which they are based. So for example, if I go shopping during my holiday in Italy and I go into a shop there, they do sell me a product, but they don't have to comply with German consumer protection law. So we're basically making it easy for both sides, and this could be applied to the internet and online videos as well. The second thing is to enforce anti-discrimination law. This is Margrethe Vestager, the Commissioner for Competition in the European Commission, because it may turn out that quite a lot of the contracts that Hollywood studios have made, for example, with pay TV providers such as Sky, are already illegal. The Commission is investigating whether these geo-blocking agreements, as the one that you have seen with Sony, are actually in conflict with EU competition law. It's already the case that a member state, for example, is not allowed to keep a company from selling to people in a particular country. So now the question is a company allowed to keep another company from selling to customers in another country? And the Commission is looking into this right now. Another thing that the EU is actually working on is to allow you to take your Netflix subscription on holiday, so kind of roaming for online subscriptions of pay TV, of streaming services, and so on. But it's really important that we don't screw this up, because there are already some lobbyists from the film industry who are saying, okay, this portability, you know, allowing somebody who has already paid for a subscription in their home country, it's okay that they take it abroad and use it during their holiday, but only for 2 weeks. After that, it has to stop. This, of course, would create a lot of problems from a privacy point of view if suddenly we're forcing all the streaming services to track everywhere you're going from where you're accessing the internet just so they can switch off your access after 14 days. That would be a terrible scenario and completely disproportionate. So there is definitely a chance that by trying to take these really small approaches to geo-blocking, we may actually be making some things worse. So we do see that the European Commission seems to have the right intentions in the sense that they're doing something about geo-blocking, but there is a danger if we don't get involved that actually these proposals will not address the core of the problem, that is online video simply not being available in your country. And that the things that they do fix, such as taking your videos on holiday with you, could actually raise more new problems, for example, for data protection. So on 25th of May, the European Commission is going to present some new proposals that will probably only address geo-blocking of products. So for example, if you get a different price for a car rental, if you order the same car from Austria than from Germany. And of course, they should do something about that, but especially the proposals that would end geo-blocking for online video, which is really what most of us are annoyed about. These proposals have been postponed to September, and there is a real danger that if we don't say that we actually want this, there will be other people whose voices will be heard, and nothing may come out of this reform after all. So what are these voices? This is something that you see quite a lot. So here we have an article from the Hollywood Reporter who is saying that if the EU gets rid of geo-blocking, this will destroy independent film in Europe completely. It's quite an Orwellian argument in a way. Geo-blocking protects films, so basically by not being seen, these films will somehow be more successful. And I think it's quite remarkable that they're basically saying we're looking out for the little guy, for the European independent films, and this is coming from the Hollywood Reporter, especially taking into account that it's also Hollywood studios that are actually being investigated by the European Commission for their geo-blocking practices. So I don't think if something were really a measure to protect European small independent film producers, why are there so many Hollywood studios out there doing exactly the same thing? And there's finally also the argument that, we shouldn't complain so much about geo-blocking anyway, because it's just, we should just get used to it, and it's the same thing as in the offline world. Here's an example of that.
Ich vergleiche das mal auch mit anderen Sektoren, die jetzt nicht im Bereich des Intellectual Property Rights ist. Ich kann in Deutschland in keinem Supermarkt, in keiner Bäckerei ein finnisches Brot kaufen. Warum? Das würden bei uns viel zu wenige kaufen, deshalb bietet der Markt mir das nicht an. Gehe ich hin und fordere jetzt von der Europäischen Kommission, dass ich dieses Produkt bitte schön gefälligst in meinem Supermarkt kaufen können muss?
Okay, so the core here of this argument is basically the market will solve it, and if there is, if something is not offered in your country, well, maybe there's just no demand for it. But, well, imagine being part of the Danish minority in Germany. You're just a few thousand people. There was never going to be a market to buy a license to show a Danish original language film in Germany because there are just not enough people who are going to buy it. But of course, if you don't geo-block the film, nobody is going to be hurt by this either, because it will only be the Danish-speaking people who can actually see it, and there wouldn't actually be any loss for anybody. So these are kind of the core arguments that come up again and again. First of all, that only large US players would benefit if we get rid of geo-blocking. Well, first of all, if you look at the European market for video on demand today, you already have only US players that actually serve the entire European market. There's not a single European video on demand platform that is available in all 28 member states. And one reason for that is that it's extremely complex to actually get all the licenses for the 28 markets. And perhaps Netflix can handle such a complexity simply because of their scale and because they already have a single market of 500 million potential customers in the US. But we need to make it easier to provide such services in all of Europe, also for European startups. Today, if you look at the UK, for example, only 5% of the video-on-demand services that are available in the UK actually come from another EU country. So in the current situation, basically, you have very, very few online services that operate in the entire EU, and then you have a lot of national services that only target a particular market. I don't think that in a situation where US companies are the only ones who can actually offer a European service, that somehow getting rid of geo-blocking would create that very situation that we already have. Another one I've already hinted at somewhat is that geo-blocking protects cultural diversity. I was very surprised when I heard this argument for the first time because it's completely counterintuitive. It's kind of, saying that if we keep people from watching European films, they will somehow get more interested in it. And I think a good thing, if you want to protect cultural minorities and cultural diversity, ask the cultural minorities what they think about it. And if you talk to, for example, the European language equality networks, exactly the people, the lobbyists of the cultural minorities, they will tell you that geo-blocking is a huge problem for them and that it actually harms cultural diversity. And if you have a Hollywood company that can actually maximize its profits by selling an exclusive license to a film that everybody wants to see 28 times to different distributors in each of the 28 countries, of course they may be able to make more money out of that than if the films weren't geo-blocked. But on the other hand, if you're a smaller European production that isn't in English, there's actually a good chance that people will still buy a license for this film simply to show it in a dubbed version, to show it in a subtitled version, and to make it accessible to the local market. So the cultural diversity, I think, can really be a benefit for the European film because it will be perfectly possible to segment the market this way. Finally, the film producers particularly say that the film financing depends on geo-blocking, the way that it is organized today. So they say if they go to a bank and get a loan to produce a film, they need a promise from a distributor that they will actually distribute it, show it in the cinemas and so on. And the distributors will only give that promise if they are awarded complete territorial exclusivity. The funny thing about this is that this exclusivity never or very, very rarely actually has a relevance in practice, because even if you look at the most popular films in Europe and whether they are available on video-on-demand platforms, you will find even really the popular award-winning European films will not be available on any video-on-demand platform at all in most European countries. So you have a big potential audience that would like to pay to see certain movies, and there simply is no offer, because the territorial licenses have to be exclusive. Nothing else is there at the moment. But of course, if you took away this absolute territorial exclusivity and told all the players, okay, you don't have to geo-block your content, but of course you can adapt it to your local market, you can only show it in a certain language, and the vast majority of other Europeans will simply not be able to understand this, I think the system would work perfectly fine. I don't think that suddenly a lot of Germans will start watching Estonian video-on-demand service that shows films in Estonian just because they can save a few bucks. I mean, maybe it's a bit different in this audience, but the vast majority of Germans greatly prefer a dubbed German version of a film, and they're willing to pay for that over an original version that they may not even understand very well. Finally, one point I think that is really important to point out is that about half of the financing for EU independent film is actually direct public funding. And on top of that, you get tax breaks and so on. So the taxpayer has already paid quite a lot for these independent European films to be produced in the first place. And I think it would be in the public interest that the viewers who have paid for these films actually have a chance to watch them. So the European Commission is now planning to lay out these detailed plans, first of all on products, on the 25th of May. After this, you will have around 1 year to get involved, to talk to your public representatives, to talk about the issue of geo-blocking publicly. And I think it's important that you show the public representatives that geo-blocking is actually something that annoys people in their daily lives. Because if you listen to some of the discussions in the European Parliament, you sometimes get the feeling that the voices of those who say geo-blocking is important and is there to support some important European values, that these voices are a lot louder than simply of the people who are faced with geo-blocking on a daily basis. So please join me in pushing for the end of geo-blocking and make sure that you get in contact with your representatives about this. I am launching a campaign called endgeoblocking.eu, and it will go online before the Commission announcement on the 25th of May. Already there are videos on the website that you can share and check out, and signed up on the website to be notified about the further steps of the campaign. We've also brought some stickers to end geo-blocking. They look like this, and Justo sitting up here has a whole bag of them if you want to pick some up later. Now, there's one more thing. Tomorrow at 5:30, there is a lightning talk that I would really like to encourage you to check out. It's done by Copyright for Creativity, which is an association of all kinds of actors, including artists, rights holders, users, researchers, who all want copyright to be reformed. And they will launch a new campaign for the ongoing copyright reform that goes beyond just the issue of geo-blocking. I've talked about geo-blocking today, but there are lots of issues with copyright that need to be changed. And two at the moment are particularly important. One is to make sure that people in all of Europe can use pictures of public buildings that they make. That's the so-called freedom of panorama. The other one is to keep the European Commission from introducing an ancillary copyright for press publishers. This is something that we've already had in Germany and in Spain for many years. It's also known as the Google tax. So basically, if a search engine uses a small part from a newspaper article, they have to pay for that. There are lots of problems with these laws already, and they're creating a lot of issues, for example, for smaller publishers and startups in Germany. So please check out the lightning talk at 5:30 tomorrow by Copyright for Creativity. And me and my assistants Justus and Christopher will also be around if you want to answer to the public consultation that the Commission is currently doing on these two questions. You can also ask us and we can help you, guide you through this consultation. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Perfect, thank you. So if we have questions from the audience, we will have 2 microphones. So feel free to raise your hands if you have questions. Do we have questions so far right now? Not everyone at the same time. No? Okay, so if there's no question. Oh, there's one question. We will bring you the microphone. If you can introduce yourself. In the meanwhile, you can get my microphone.
Tim Odendahl vom Münster. Wird es zu dieser Kampagne so Vorlagen geben, wie es sie zuletzt bei anderen Konsultationen gab, wie sie zum Beispiel EDRI vorgegeben hat, wo es dann so Erklärungen zu den einzelnen Beispielen gibt?
Whether
So, wir brauchen noch ein Mikrofon. Schau mal, ich gebe dir ein Mikrofon, dann machen wir es mit dem einfach.
Okay, das funktioniert. The question was whether there will be a guide on how to answer this consultation. My understanding is that yes, part of the campaign that will be presented will include a detailed guide, but I would really like to encourage you, if you are staying for the entire Republika here anyway, fill in the consultation while you are here. It doesn't take a lot of time. You have people here who you can actually ask about the detailed questions, and that way you have it done. You have people who can help you with any legal questions that you may have, and that way it's much easier not to forget it. The deadline for the consultation is the 11th of June, but I think the more people get ready to answer these questions right now, the better. Thanks.
Do we have another question? No? Okay. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining the panel.